car's headlights, walking by herself in the middle of the night. No one beside her, she was all alone, moving like a ghost down Cossart Road. I said, hey baby, why you out so late? Risking your life and tempting fate, walking in the dead gaze of the scarecrows. Bad people love to drive down Cossart Road. She said, I remember, but I guess you don't know. You crashed your car here 7 years ago. The windshield cracked, the blood flowed. You're just a ghost on Cossart Road.
Hey, greetings, Gherkins. Good morning. Happy whatever day you're having. I need a lot of coffee. I was at a show last night, so. And don't ask if it was a good show or a bad show, because that's rockism, making us decide what music is good and bad. All music is relevant. Anyway, after seeing what you just saw, you probably have some questions, and foremost on your mind is probably, what the hell is the deal with Cossart Road? But before I go into that, I just want to say, if you're not interested in urban legends, and I understand that, I do, I will put the timestamp right here. It'll be right up on the screen somewhere around here. I'll put the timestamp up for when the music stuff starts, me discussing the stuff that goes into making the song. So you can jump ahead to that. If you're just interested in urban legends, just watch the first part. You don't have to watch the technical stuff. And if you're interested in both, boy, have I got a video for you. All right, so first we're going to talk about Cossart Road. Now, I grew up in a place called Coatesville, Pennsylvania, which is a horrible, horrible town. How bad can it be, you ask? Joe Jack Talcum also grew up there, so let that sink in. But anyway, Coatesville, Pennsylvania was just north of Chadds Ford. I'm having trouble seeing my finger because my notes cover up that side of it. Coatesville was just north of Chadds Ford, and then Chadds Ford was just north of Wilmington. And Cossart Road was between Chadds Ford and Wilmington. I hope that makes sense to you. That'll help you find it later on, should you decide to go looking for it. And I really suggest that you do that. Anyway, when I grew up in Coatesville, but I took music lessons in Chadds Ford, and there's a lot of great stuff in Chadds Ford. The Wyeth Museum is there. There's Longwood Gardens. It's beautiful. There's a battle fought there in the Revolutionary War. It's a beautiful town. It's really nice. Not like Coatesville. Coatesville is a hellhole. But so what happened was, when I was taking music lessons there, that's when I first heard about Cossart Road. And then also, when I got back into Coatesville, I would mention it, and other people go, oh, man, "Oh, you didn't go down there, did you? They got like the DuPonts have a whole mental asylum there for like the inbred DuPonts." And later on, we found out that the DuPonts did have some trouble when a wrestler turned up dead, and one of them met the cops at the front gate of his house in a tank. But that's a whole nother video. But anyway. They'd be like, "Oh man, there's like devil worshippers out there. It's like a cult house." And then they practice all sorts of weird things out there. And they've got trees that are all bent, and there's trees that are shaped like skulls. You know, a lot of horse shit. Really, there's a lot of horse shit. What actually did happen out in Cossart Road, how it got the original reputation, was after World War I, a photographer had gone out there to take pictures out. There's a beautiful little village out there. And what happened was he had the influenza. We call it like the 1919 influenza. They used to call it the Spanish flu, but it turns out it started in Kansas City. So, you'd think it would call it the Kansas City flu, but I don't know. That sounds better. It sounds like an old blues song. But he actually got everybody sick, and just about everybody there died. So that's how the reputation originally came about. And if you want to know something else weird about it, that's where M. Night Shyamalan decided to film The Village. So, starring Nepo baby Bryce Howard. So it's an intriguing area. It is kind of interesting. I actually grew up in Coatesville, which, as I mentioned about a dozen times in this video, we weren't far from Downingtown, and Downingtown had a weird tunnel road called the Red Gates of Hell, and there actually was a murder there. Somebody was chopped up and put into a suitcase. I'll put links. If you really want to go down these rabbit holes, I will put links in the description, and you can learn all you want about Cossart Road. And there's actually a weird Pennsylvania article that mentions the whole Coatesville down to Chad's Ford down to Wilmington thing. So you can learn all you want about Cossart Road, the Red Gates of Hell. Gather the family around the computer. Make it family time. I miss family time around the computer. We used to have that in the 60s. Anyway, so why was I even thinking about Cossart Road? Good question. My good friends Karen and Paul, Dan and I once went on a Jersey Devil hunt with them, a whole nother thing, just for fun. But Karen and Paul, they're fashion designers. They're Haney Bogart, which is a really great fashion thing, fashion house that they have, designing studio, whatever you want to call it. And my niece Elena sometimes models for them. So right there, you say you never talk about your friends and family. Talked about my friends and family. I recommend that you go look at their clothes. It's really good. But Paul and Karen have a membership at Longwood Gardens, and part of the reason they do is, as clothing designers, they like to go out and take pictures of flowers, and then incorporate that into their, I call it artwork, into their fashion. And I like to learn things from other disciplines, so I thought, well, this is great. And also, I took a bunch of pictures of flowers, and I have a thing called a granular synth that you can put those into, you can upload them into, and then the granular synth will turn those into sounds, which is super cool. So I'm out there, and so what we did was we went out there, and we were on our way from Longwood Gardens down to a restaurant in Delaware, and down to a place called Bruster's Real Ice Cream, which I heavily recommend. If I was like a young person, that would be my hangout. I would just be at Bruster's Real Ice Cream all the time. I can't get any fatter than I am right now, but man, Bruster's is really good. It was a really good time hanging out there. So I'm just giving it a little plug there because it was awesome. But we were on our way from Longwood Gardens down to Bruster's, and I said, hey, wait a minute, we're going by Cossart Road. This is really cool. So what I did was, when we were down at Bruster's, I was trying to get Paul to say Cossart Road out loud, just to see if anybody would turn around and turn away. So it's got a really, really bad local reputation. And again, as I pointed out, the internet did it no favors. When the internet came along, Cossart Road's reputation went right into the toilet. And then M. Night Shyamalan, I always guess, except for The Sixth Sense, I think it's the only one I didn't guess. I always guess the endings of his films. So it's got a shocking twist. No, not for me. So that's, all right, there we go. That's the little primer in Cossart Road and Red Gates of Hell. I'd say I will put up links, and for those of you spooky types, you can go down those links. So, and I wish you the best of luck. And think about what my youth must have been like growing up near all these weird places. I'm sure it didn't affect me at all. All right, let's talk about the song Cossart Road. Now, the first thing that you heard there was a thing called a box cello. Now, the box cello came about because once I had, let's talk a little bit about, the whole thing is Tales from the FrankenCartridge. Once I had the FrankenCartridge up and running, I realized I had 128 more slots, or spots. Let's call them splots. I have more splots, 128 more splots for patches. And that's not even counting performance patches, which were when you bundle them together. So I was real happy. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go out and find some stuff. Now, I'm going to get up for a second because I did not plan this in the best way. So hang on for a second. All right, so what I've done is, over the years, I've hung on to these things. This is a book here called 300 Voices for Yamaha 4 Operator Synths, and this goes back to the 80s. Take a look at that. And I also have up here, let me get this. I hope this is the right one. I'm going to be really embarrassed. You'd think I would plan these better. No, it is the right one. And I have a lot of books in here. All right, so these are more patching libraries. So take a look here. And each one of these has many, many, many patches on it. And what I like to do is go through and I take the patches and I'll play with them. So I'll change the algorithm, change different parts of it, and get stuff I like. And over the years, I've learned things about algorithms. Algorithm 5, if you're looking to make some sort of pad, Algorithm 5 is great. Basically got two different things going on. And we'll talk about algorithms in a future video. But what happened, while on a patch search, I found a site where they had put all these old copies of AfterTouch magazine. That's right, Yamaha had a magazine called AfterTouch. Can you show me on the keyboard where the bad man AfterTouched you? So, I'm looking in AfterTouch magazine, and I see this patch for a box cello, and I'll put up the link. Just be careful. It's not an HTTPS. It's not a secured site where the AfterTouch magazines are. So you go there at your own risk. But I saw this one patch for a box cello. I'm like, oh, I love cellos. I'll get the box cello, put it into the system, and the box cello sounded really good. So I had that little grain of thought in there, and that's bumping up against Cossart Road, which is saying, I need to be a song. Also, there's a guy here in Philly, again, more links, but you're going to love his stuff. A guy here in Philly named David Hilowitz, which always reminds me of the Jackie Mason line, like, I'm wearing my Hilowitz. But Mr. Hilowitz is a genius. He's a trained violinist, but he finds messed up instruments and he brings them back to life. And at one point, Mr. Hilowitz decided he was going to build a box cello. So after I had made my box cello patch, I went down the box cello rabbit hole and was learning everything I could about box cellos. And there's an incredible video of Mr. Hilowitz making a box cello, and you're watching it and you're thinking, oh, this thing is going to sound like crap. This is going to sound awful. But it doesn't. It sounds really, really good. And he has whole videos of him just doing little concerts on them. So now, another thing here about the box cello. Normally, if you have a cello and you're thinking reverb, you want to put that cello in like a large room. But in my head, for this song, this is all taking place in like cabins, in woods, stuff like that. So I've got it in a fairly, like a medium-sized room. Imagine like a one-room cabin. That's the reverb I was going through. I'll get to my reverb unit in a minute here. All right, so we've talked about the book of patches. Now I want to talk about the because one of those came from that. I want to talk for a minute here about the second sound that you heard. And the second sound that you heard, the chorus sound, was actually a sound I found in one of the books. And I'll put up a little picture of the actual parameters of the patch called Voices. Ooh, Voices. Now, with Voices, what I found is when I've got a chorusing sound, I don't like to throw any reverb on that. I just like to go with straight chorus, which brings us to the NTSs. All right, so this is my new NTS. And the reason I use these as effects units is because of something Gary Newman had said about drum sounds. Gary Newman would stay up all night looking for the perfect snare sound. Boom, boom. Like 4 in the morning. We've all done this if you're producing music. And you're like, oh. No. And Gary Newman said, look, I've got 700 or 800 drum kits on my computer. Each one of those has 3 snares. If you don't find it in the first couple hours, you're never going to find it. And that's kind of the way I feel about effects. I have hundreds of effects on my computer. I like to narrow it down to just the effects on these things. So the chorusing I used came off of this, as did the room sound for the cello. Now, like I said, don't throw any reverb. Chorusing is usually enough for choruses. When I get reverb in there, it gets messy, and then you have to throw a high-pass filter on it. And by that point, you spent more time working on making the song sound good than you did on the song, and you don't want to do that. Focus on your song. All right. I used to use this. This is my original NTS-1. But unfortunately, as we would say, this little output right here is a bit fiddly. Or as the British would say, it's a bit shite, and it died. And even with my ability to solder things back together and bring back dead electronics, this was just a nightmare. I always tell people, if you get one of these, and it's a good unit, if you get one of these, make sure you get a hot glue gun and just go over top of this little pot right here, which is the output. I couldn't save it. I'm going to miss this one. But they did come out. I kind of like this a little bit better. They still don't have enough third-party sounds for these. So we need more third-party effects. But this is what I use as an effects unit. Everything goes through this and into the computer. So, and I try to keep it light. I do not want to start, thinking, going on the computer going, oh, wait a minute, hyperchorus? Maybe it needs a hyperchorus. No, focus on your song. All right. Talk about the drums and bass, because they come in next. I said before that I was going to strictly be using the DX11. Only going to use the DX11. No. I am using the 7th Victim setup because actually it's closer to what I used to use back in the day. I like the sound of the sampled drums. I was getting kind of like a tinny. It's hard to make good FM drums. Some people can do it. I can get close. They sound to me. My friend Rob Winfelder from Live Not on Evil have a great new album out. Actually, wait a minute. I actually do have something handy. Yeah, the new Live Not on Evil album. It's really good. Him and I were talking about how bad everything sounded in the 70s. And people would talk about 70s sound. They would, oh man, listen to this guitar solo on this Foreigner album. It'll blow your mind. And Rob would say, the drums sound like shit. The drums sound like somebody put a carpet over the drums and the drummer and told him, just play under this carpet. So to me, I wasn't getting the full dynamics that I wanted out of the drum sound. Now, also the bass sound is FM bass. You can not go wrong with FM bass. I didn't have the best bass when I did this Ghastly Noise, the last song I had here. I should have probably used another FM bass, but I'm a big fan of FM bass. I make them all the time. Maybe we'll make one in a video, and you can hear how they sound. But I'm using the FM bass from the Volca FM, which is really, really good and gives you really good FM bass sound. So I'm cheating a little bit there. And the reason I'm using that is that's a 7th Victim setup. They're both sitting together. I've got the Key Pro from Arturia that I use to sequence everything on. So I sequence my bass and drums, and then I play live over top of them with everything else. And weirdly enough, this was a one take. Everything I played over top, and I'm not playing really difficult stuff, but I was really happy. I didn't flub anything. It's a rare day. The vocals weren't even one take. Had to go through those 3 or 4 times. All right, so that's how to do that. I want to talk for a bit about the reverb that I used on bass and drums. I have what I call the pillars of the earth theory for reverb. There had been they made a TV series out of it. There had been a book. It was about the building of a cathedral. And that's the way I think of sort of how I stack things when I do reverb. Bass and drums to me, and again, we were talking about Live Not on Evil. I saw them play in a basement a few weeks back. And I'm like, man, the bass and drums sound really good. I'm thinking, yeah, every time, like I was in bands and we practiced in somebody's basement. Milkman used to practice in Dean's basement. The bass and drums sound great. So I began putting, that's my thing now, I put all the bass and drums, I put a basement reverb on those. In this case, I'm using Edgar Allan Poe's basement, because I live in Philadelphia, and they let me go there and get an impulse. That's where you bang something together, and then you take that sound, record it, and you put that in a thing called a convolution reverb, and it gives you the reverb that you would get in that room. If you go to my website, I'll put up pictures, there'll be links, you know how it is. You can get Edgar Allan Poe's basement reverb, the sound for that, and you can also get the reverb out of my basement. But that is my thing. From now on, putting drums and bass in the basement, because that's where they belong. And if you've ever met a drummer or a bass player, you know they're happier in the basement. And then above that, you start going up. So, as you get into voices, those go into rooms depending on what you're doing. This may be a bigger room than that room. From there out, some people like to put choirs in the sound of a church. Depends on what you're doing. I don't like a lot of reverb like that. I like my choirs to be creepy choir. And in order to get them creepy, I need them to be in your face and close. So I either will just use chorusing for that. If I have to use a reverb, I don't go very big. I go like a New England-sized church. So I don't go like a cathedral in France, just a little church in New England. So that's a little bit of advice for you. Also, I want to talk about delay on the bass. This is an important thing. And this is one of the things you might want to write down. For delay on the bass, I do that on, if you've got 3 or 4 verses that are the same, usually you got like 3, and it's the same structure, kind of sounds the same. On that second verse, I will put some delay on the bass just to make it a little bit different. Again, you may not notice it, but when I'm singing to it, I notice it. So just do that. Just try it. I'm not, when you people go and you do your exercises after you watch one of these videos, that should be one of your exercises. Make something with 3 verses in there and have that middle verse a little delay on the bass, and you will find it makes a world of difference. Some people will put it on like the snare or maybe the bass drum. I just find that the bass, particularly if it's a busy bass part, that little bit of delay, just people, and as I used to say on Red Letter Media, like you probably didn't notice it, but your brain did, and it's probably something you probably heard it a million times in songs, never noticed it. Go back and listen for it, and you'll begin to hear it. So, particularly, I think they start using it later in later Motown stuff. All the best stuff is used in later Motown stuff. The other sort of creepy choir type sound is Spooky 5. Spooky 5 is a performance. It's made up of several other patches, and that's the one you heard on This Ghastly Noise. Because I want to have something to tie this song back to that one. From now on, all the songs will be tied together. The drums and bass will be the same drum and bass setup that I have, which I'm super happy with, so that's why I'm going to use it. But that'll tie them together. But I wanted this to be able to tie it back to This Ghastly Noise. Now, you're probably wondering about that spooky woman when we get into the break and that. Okay, the spooky woman is from first of all, explain something. FL Studio put out a thing called FL Cloud, and for like $7 you could get all this cool shit. I haven't even used, I think I've used like $5 cents worth of, I got $6.95 left of my $7 I haven't used, and I've gotten a lot of stuff out of there. It's really super cool. This was the thing I think called Cinematic Choir, and I'll put up the little things for it and links for that. If you have FL Studio, please think about getting FL Cloud, because you pull this stuff down and you use it, and I use it in really weird, perverse ways. And again, this is all, once you bought that, you own the copyright on that, or you can't, it's not copyright infringement. It's free use. You can use that in your stuff if you pay for it, which is, I used to use old demo stuff. We get the stuff from a guy from Earth, Wind, and Fire. He used to come with the old Ensoniq sequencer, and I used to use him a lot. I think Maurice White was his name, I think, and he'd have these things going, baby, and I put those in the songs. It's just a lot of fun. But yeah, you definitely want to if you check that out. But I love taking that sort of weird stuff and throwing it in there. One of the great things about working by myself, I can't see the milkman letting me pull that stunt off. So that's I'm happy about getting to stretch a little. So that's another thing it's cheering about. Oh, reverb. It's important. The reverb. I used a convolution reverb on Choir Lady, and with the convolution reverb I use is for a forest. So she should sound like she's in a forest, just to give it that creepy Cossart Road. We're in the woods, and there's a creepy devil choir out there. So there. And now the other thing I try not to do is I try not to use a whole bunch of instruments. At any point, there's usually maybe like 4 or 5 things going on. We got bass and drums going on. Then there is either a pad or a lead, and then the vocals. That's all we're doing. Sometimes, it'll be bass and drums, and here is the cello, and on top of that cello is that voice choir going. That's only 4. I try not to go. You don't need to throw the kitchen sink in there. Take a look. Do you ever take a look at the back of the first Ramones album? The credits. The credits are like guitar, bass, drums, vocals. That's it. That's all they needed, and they made great albums. I think a lot of times people are like, trying to get that, I played the zither. That was my first zither credit. You don't need to do that. Also, you get into this weird frequency canceling thing, where one frequency will cancel the other one out, and that's always a nightmare. Once Cousin Jimmy, who plays a mean triangle, comes by, and ding, 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 well, why can't I hear the hi-hat anymore? So I don't even use hi-hats. I use kick drum and snare. Those are drums. You don't need anything more than... We're not in a marching band. So, yeah, just a little bit. I think a lot of extra instruments get piled on. I know Kate Bush used to have, just layer synths on, and then wonder, well, why can't I hear the Juno 8? Well, there's 50 synths on top of it, Kate. So the only bad thing I ever had to say about Kate Bush. Other than that, she walks on water. She is awesome. So, that's another tough thing. And stick to your guns, people. I don't stick to my guns enough. I just think about that when I'm in the studio. If I brought this into the studio, I'm sure somebody sitting behind the desk would go, "Let's have Joe do the thing," and he would rightly say no. He's no dummy. But I'm just saying, just say no. This is the weird lady from the forest, and she's gonna sing it. So, all right. And structure-wise for the song is a ballad. There's no chorus in there. It's just straight. Here's what happens. In structure A, he sees, his girlfriend on Cossart Road. And structure B, he's, pulling up next to her. And tried to get my vocals, which I should have mentioned earlier, tried to make them sound like they were coming from inside a car. So you got to be very careful with the verb on that and decreasing it a lot, moving the room in. And then, and so he's trying to tell her in Act B how dangerous the road is. And you're listening to Act B, this is where the delay is in the bass. And then, if you, in the last act, you find out, and M. Night Shyamalan's shocking twist here, he died right there in a car crash 7 years before, and he is a ghost on Cossart Road. So I bring it all the way back to M. Night Shyamalan filming there. So... And now I'd like you to meet Bryce Howard. So, so I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you take today and experiment. You can experiment with the delay, experiment with reverb. If you have FL Studio, you want to get a cloud for like $7, you can get like 100 credits. And believe me, I think I've used up like what they count as like 1 credit. So, and I use up a lot of this. I play with it a lot. So I wanted to make a whole album, music for cults, at one point. So I was going out to FL Studio and getting all these weird chanting things and all that stuff. So do that. Either today, make a song for a cult. Just make up a cult. If you have an urban legend that you grew up in your area, not everybody was fortunate like me to be surrounded by urban legends. But if you have one, that might be a good idea for a song. Experiment. If you've got any sort of synth, experiment with some sound making. Just go and make one of your own. Or if you can find some old books like I do, go in there, find one of those, and find a sound might be interesting, and tweak it. I do it all the time. Also, play around with your, I think I mentioned before, but please play around with your effects units and try to limit down to one thing. Just, okay, this is my one thing. This is my Swiss Army knife, and this is what I'm going to be using. So, that's the one thing I forgot to mention. God, what is wrong with me? All right, so when I talked about this, I should have mentioned the fact that everybody, when they put one of these, because you have to put these together, it comes as a kit, everybody has a video, sped up video of them putting this together. And I'm no exception. I have a 2-minute video of me putting this together, and it's got the sound of the Korg NTS-1 Mark II underneath it, just playing some arpeggios. It's only 2 minutes out of your life. I recommend that you watch it.